This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Get woke. Folks, MIP is now COVID-free, meaning free to all subscribers as we navigate this pandemic. We're thinking about everyone, and we've got to get through this together. So for a limited time, no fee to subscribe to Make It Plain on your favorite podcast app. Today, May 19th, would have been the 95th birthday of Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz Omawale. You know, it's interesting. I remember, maybe you do too, the royal wedding a couple of years ago when Bishop Michael Curry spoke, and he invoked Martin Luther King and slavery and love and fire. So I thought that was interesting because the royal wedding actually took place on Malcolm X's birthday on May 19th. I'm not saying they planned it for his birthday, but when he spoke of fire, Bishop Curry, it to me invoked Malcolm, because Malcolm was both love like Dr. King and fire in terms of our people. Dr. King would say that love without power is sentimental and anemic. And Malcolm took the anemia out of our love for ourselves, our humanity, our culture, our love for our Blackness. That's what Malcolm did. And he made us love ourselves as Black people. And he was a precursor to the modern Black Power movement. You know, if you've ever loved someone or been in love, all different types of love, but I'm sure we've all had experiences where we've loved someone and it's just been kind of boring and mundane and blah. You like love to have a little fire and passion. And Malcolm's love for his people, for all of us, had that fire and that passion. And that's why he's so important. He was like the hot sauce on something good. You know, he helped us get our culture out of lockdown. So happy birthday, El-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz Omawale. Folks, once again, we're happy to have with us Eric Boehlert of pressrun.media, fearless journalism about journalism. He's doing a lot of great work. Support Press Run at pressrun.media, if you will. Eric, how are you? And I guess you're still holding strong in the pandemic, huh?
Yeah. Yep. I lost count of the weeks like everybody else, but so far so good. Everyone's healthy.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. So here again, we have a somewhat peculiar situation. We talk a lot about Fox News, but then sometimes these people on Fox News end up going to other mainstream outlets. You know, you had Megyn Kelly go to NBC, and now you've got Catherine Herridge at CBS, and she's pushing Obamagate, isn't she?
She is. So I actually wrote about when she went to CBS last year, and I said, you know, the headline was, "Please stop doing this." You know, she was the point person for Benghazi, right? So she was aggressively wrong about Benghazi for 3 years at Fox News. She probably aired hundreds and hundreds of reports, whatever the Republican Party was feeding her in terms of about this vast conspiracy. And then, you know, it's kind of sad and ironic when we think about Benghazi now. You know, 4 Americans tragically lost their lives. We've had 21,000 Benghazis under Trump since March of this pandemic, and the Republican Party will never hold an oversight hearing about the Republican president. So Catherine Herridge was the face of Benghazi at Fox News. Got the strong story wrong, aggressively wrong for 4 years. You either have to be essentially dishonest or inept to do those two things. And lo and behold, she got a promotion. She ended up at CBS. In the pyramid of media, going from cable news to network news is a big deal. It's kind of the ultimate, still considered kind of the ultimate job, the ultimate assignment. Mm-hmm. She's a national security reporter, and so she caught some attention in the last week for a couple of things. One of the reasons, we can talk about it. Someone on the Biden staff called her a right-wing hack, which I think is accurate. So she had this sit-down interview with Bill Barr. Bill Barr 10 days ago said, "We are dropping the Flynn investigation." Trump's former national security advisor, who pleaded guilty not once, twice, to lying to the FBI about covering up his previous connections with Russian officials during the 2016 campaign. Barr's utterly corrupt Department of Justice to announce, even though he lied to the FBI, we're going to drop the case because there never should have been a case. It was all entrapment. It was all part of this deep state conspiracy of the remnants of the Obama administration in January 2017, days before the inauguration. Apparently, this fantasy is that there was this huge last minute push, to criminalize Trump, to entrap him. And one way they did it was to get Michael Flynn to lie to the FBI. So he shocked the legal community. We've had a petition signed by 2,000 former prosecutors, FBI officials, saying Barr has to resign in order to protect the integrity of the Department of Justice. So Barr gives a sit-down interview to Catherine Herridge, and she walks him through this softball interview. Never holds him accountable. Actually gives him these leading questions about, it just sounds like you're trying to root out politics at the Department of Justice. It looked like a Fox News interview, and it was CBS, and it was embarrassing. And then a couple of days later, in terms of this Obamagate, the administration is peddling this incoherent tale, and they gave her some scoop. She claimed she, landed this big scoop. They obviously just handed it to her, I think, and so that created some tension as well. And so my point was, if you want to talk about the liberal media, the myth of the liberal media, we should address things like why a Fox News reporter is being promoted and promoted on CBS News, and why she's doing such awful journalism, and why the networks. To me, the real insight here is they're so anxious, they're so desperate, to bend over backwards to show conservatives, oh, we're not so bad. We're not so bad. They basically hired this woman, in my view, to do softball interviews with Republicans. I mean, she was hired because she could probably produce access. And just real quick, last week when she gave that Barr interview, there was a lot of pushback, a lot of criticism. CBS News put out a statement, oh, we're so proud of her. That interview with Bill Barr was picked up nationally and internationally. We got, basically they were saying we got a lot of attention for it, so it was good.
Yeah.
The ratings were good. We got quoted, so it was good. The interview itself is an embarrassment and should be taught in journalism school how not to try to hold public officials accountable in a time of crisis.
Yeah, so they pretty much admitted that it was clickbait.
Yep. Yeah. And that's her job. Her job, they knew when they hired her, we have a Republican administration, we have a radical right partisan administration. How can we get access? Let's hire someone from Fox News and we'll get access. And so far it's working. It's not producing journalism of any kind. It's more like state-run stenography. And that should be cause for concern for CBS News, I would think.
It'll be good when we get to the point in this new culture of ubiquitous social media, when people and institutions, corporations, and presidents for that matter, are not defined by a certain number of likes. Mm-hmm. Because an algorithm is not always genuine in terms of whether or not people really like you or not.
Right.
And I've spoken to groups of kids, Eric, whose their self-esteem allows them, they allow their self-esteem to be tied up in likes and whatnot. Right. That's unhealthy on one end of the spectrum. But this is unhealthy on the other end, when you have utter dysfunction when it comes to journalism and government and accountability,
Right.
based upon a bunch of likes. And as we've talked about before, you know, it's really disproportionate and a false equivalency, because the segment of Trump's base is so are so much sycophants.
Yeah.
They will just like everything.
Right.
That even, you know, that just comes across the plate. They'll swing at every pitch. And it's not really right. And it's not really a true reflection
Right.
of reality. Even if every one of us on the other side of the spectrum ignored it, they only do one thing. It's an obsession. Oh, we like it. And then it really gives a false sense of approval and a false sense of accuracy and professionalism and success that's just not real.
Right.
And it's almost incestuous. You know, it'd be like if you or I posted something and just everybody in our family liked it.
Right.
You know, that's what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And then the whole access thing, man, my God, you know, it's just a circle of incest. Access, softball interviews,
Yep.
likes,
Well,
access, softball, likes. It's just a circle of incest.
this is the problem. I wrote recently about, particularly network interviews with Trump. It all kind of blurs together. But the ABC, David Muir, the ABC anchor who interviewed Trump 2 weeks ago. First Trump interview outside of Fox News since the pandemic started. An incredibly important opportunity. Trump had just ended 2 months of briefings, 6 weeks of briefings, where he lied every day about the national health crisis.
Mm-hmm.
That ABC interview was a joke as well.
Yeah.
Never held him accountable. ABC knew exactly what lies Trump was going to tell because he had told them every day for 6 weeks during the briefings. He repeated those lies robotically, and no pushback at all. So we see it over and over again with the network news, with interviewing Trump, with this Barr interview that CBS did. They seem to see journalism as getting the interview. Everything after that is just kind of pro forma.
Right.
You're here, I'm here. We have our assigned roles. We're going to do this kabuki dance. The interviewer is going to feign modest interest in holding this person accountable. The person answering the questions can basically just deliver gibberish, whatever they want. There will be no serious pushback, and everyone goes home happy and shakes hands. The network feels like they got a coup. They're going to get headlines, and Republican officials will come back because literally no attempt to hold them accountable during a national health crisis that has killed 90,000 Americans, killed 40 million jobs. And the network news division just seemed to see their job is to maintain that access. Because if we come down hard on Trump in his first non-Fox interview during a pandemic, he might not come back. And that's what they think their job is. So we see it over and over. It's incredibly distressing. It's incredibly dangerous for a democracy. These people show no trepidation when there's a Democrat in the White House. And they're kneeling down to the most historically, consistently unpopular president in American history. He's never been over 50%. I kind of understood at least the politics and the business of George Bush post 9/11, George Bush right after the invasion of Iraq, 80% popularity, 70% popularity. I could see newsrooms kind of pulling back, like, okay, let's be careful. Let's not go out on a limb. Let's not be tagged as unpatriotic. This guy is super popular. Trump's, he's been at 44% for 3 years, and they're still just bowing down to this guy because they're so bullied and they're so intimidated. That kind of segues to the column I did on Friday at pressrun.media, which is the refusal for any of these people to call for Trump's resignation. No. We've talked about this before. 100+ newspapers demanded Bill Clinton resign. Bill Clinton was unfit to serve. He could not represent the United States on the global stage because he had told a single lie about an extramarital affair. Trump, we could come up with 25 reasons, 25 instances, 25 meltdowns, 25 attacks on the Constitution. And these same newspapers, same news organizations are so bullied and so battered that they can't even summon the courage when there's 40 million lost jobs and 90,000 dead to say, hey, this guy's not up for the job. They just won't do it, and they can't do it. It's really remarkable.
Part of the bullying too seems to be a complete unwillingness or inability to ponder that he actually might lose. In other words, the other part of the juxtaposition is, and you analyze this too, the fixation with Biden failing.
Right.
Something is, I mean, and it's like Biden, if Biden literally didn't campaign another minute, just sat at home still, that's still better than all the people that are dying right now. You know what I'm saying? So how is Biden not getting coverage, which is also the media's decision? They choose to cover Trump and not Biden. All right. So how are Biden's shortcomings, which I can't seem to find right now anyway, but what on earth is he doing that is so much less successful than what Trump is doing? That's the other thing about this. It's a veil. It's almost like they're not just bullied, it's almost an intoxicant.
It's like they're living in a separate universe. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was just looking at this column right before we started talking on CNN, Chris Cillizza, and he just wrote a column today saying, yes, Trump might be a jerk. Yes, you might not like him, but he gets things done, and that's why he can win re-election. And the column didn't mention that 40 million lost jobs or 90,000 dead Americans. I mean, it is a fantasy world where Republicans, and particularly Trump, are super savvy. They have this innate, unshakable break with the American public. But to the Biden stuff, I mean, imagine what the coverage would look like if Biden were actually trailing by 5 points instead of ahead of 5 points. Look, I understand everyone's going to say polls were wrong in 2016. Polls were wrong. We don't know what's going to happen. That's kind of like the media's free pass, right? If any other election, and they go to RCP where every poll is listed, and Trump leads in one of the last 49 polls, the assumption would be from the press is that candidate, not necessarily Trump, that candidate is in trouble. That candidate is trailing. But they have 2016, so they could say, well, the polls don't matter. So we can write whatever we want. We can write Dems in disarray from now until November because we don't know what's going to happen. Biden might be up 12 points in November. And they can say, well, the polls were wrong, so we can write whatever we want. And what they want to write is that Dems are in disarray and that Trump is super savvy. And Trump has, is outsmarting them and outmaneuvering them. And Biden's in over his head. I keep tweeting about this, but, in terms of the senior vote, in terms of the polls, there's been a 20-point shift since 2016. Trump won them by 10. Biden is ahead by 10. Democrats have not won the senior vote in many decades. Right. If Democrats win the senior vote, the election's over. Yeah. I mean, it's just over. Just mathematically. And and you see some coverage here and there. You imagine if Biden were trailing in 10 points and a demo Hillary won by 10 points. That would be the only story. Literally, it would be the only story being covered because that would be Dems in disarray. So the other important thing is, these news organizations have set aside an incredible amount of time and resources to cover the campaign, which doesn't exist. There are no rallies, there are no campaign stops, but they have to produce this content. And so the content is, we think Democrats are in trouble. We think there's a panic. And so that's the story they keep hitting over and over. I've never seen a political campaign narrative where the person who is ahead in every single poll is consistently portrayed as the person trailing. We are in kind of an Alice in Wonderland. Yeah. I don't know who's going to win. I'm not here to say Democrats have this locked up, but campaign coverage usually follows a certain pattern. A lot of it is based on polls. Yeah. But the press is kind of committed to just looking at this and saying polls don't matter. This is what's in our gut. just a quick example. There was a piece in the New York Times about the pandemic and about these anti-lockdown demonstrations.
Right.
Press is constantly treating them as a Republican victory, even though a lot of these protests have like 80 or 90 people. Anyway, the New York Times piece, it was about Pennsylvania, and it was reporting how Republicans in Pennsylvania, in their gut, feel like this is a good political move, that it's going to help them. It wasn't until you got halfway through the article that the New York Times acknowledged even polls in Pennsylvania show Republicans in Pennsylvania support the Democratic governor who wants to not lift restrictions yet. Right. So we're literally getting this coverage that, you know, the polling is one thing, but in our gut, we think this is good for Republicans. We think they're outmaneuvering Democrats. And look, that's been the storyline for decades. And they're not going to budge, even though 40 million lost jobs. We've talked about this in 2014 when 2 people died of Ebola. Obama's political obituary was being written in some places in the Beltway press. 2 people died. And that was proof that the federal government didn't work. That was proof that Democrats couldn't lead. We are hurtling towards 100,000 dead. And a lot of that same Beltway press is saying, well, it looks pretty good for Trump. Looks pretty good for Trump.
Right, right.
It's completely illogical. And it just addresses this kind of Alice in Wonderland world that they live in.
And what exactly is Obamagate? Do we still know for sure what exactly it is they're talking about?
Well, he was asked Trump was asked at a press conference last week, and he couldn't or wouldn't articulate it. You know, in the grand scheme of things, it's this vast left-wing deep state conspiracy. That, and again, we talked about it briefly. The final weeks of the Obama administration, there was, from what I understand, there was this attempt to criminalize the Trump administration, and I think it's supposed to be part of the Mueller investigation, which I don't understand because Obama was not around. I love this Fox News narrative about how the Mueller investigation, the Russian investigation, was some Democratic plot. It was a Republican White House, a Republican Senate, a Republican DOJ, a Republican FBI. There wasn't a Democrat involved in any of that. You know, it was a Republican Attorney General who appointed Mueller. It was a Republican who oversaw the Department of Justice. It's kind of amazing for them to portray this deep state. No Democrats were in power in any of those places. Republicans ran the whole field, and now they're trying to drag Obama back in. As I said yesterday, it's just amazing to watch. And Democrats, you never want to. Nobody knows how this is going to play out, but why would they want to bring Obama back? I mean, is there a Republican strategist anywhere in America who thought the key to Trump's victory was to run against Biden and Obama in 2020?
Right. Not to mention this clamoring for him to be called to testify.
Yeah.
I don't think they want that. I mean, not that he would, but what if he did? Oh yeah, I'll come testify and do 24 hours or 17 hours, however many hours Hillary did. Do you really want to do that?
And this is all based, incredibly, this is all based on that single audio that was leaked a week ago, where apparently Obama said this, pandemic response is that Trump is reeling 8 days later. He is willing to toss away his entire reelection campaign. Nobody wants him to run against Obama. Nobody. But he won't listen to anyone. So that one comment, Obama hasn't said anything in 3 years. That one comment leaked. 8 days later, Trump is still reeling. Who knows what this campaign is going to look like? Because of course, Obama's going to be on stage with Biden.
Yeah, gone.
He's going to lose his mind.
And they don't know they go from birtherism to, right. At one time there was conspiracy. Today is would have been Malcolm X's 95th birthday. You probably remember at one time there was a conspiracy that Barack Obama, a conspiracy theory that Barack Obama was the illegitimate son of Malcolm X. So think about that, Eric. He's 1 minute he's the son of Malcolm X, the next minute he's deep state,
right, in
collusion with the federal government, right? Malcolm X's son would be right.
He's a very powerful man. He's a very powerful man. He runs a movie production company.
Right, and he runs right. So it's no. I do not think they want him to testify.
No, nobody does.
And they
again,
do not want him. They do not want to. That would be a big mistake.
yeah, of course, and like I said, there's no one connected to his campaign or anyone who runs a serious election for the Republican Party. I mean, these senators who are fading fast in places like Arizona and Maine and Colorado. You think they want to run against Obama in the fall? That will be the death knell, just absolute death knell.
But so, Eric, here's the other thing, and it's always sensitive and somewhat perilous to get into this, but I think the way I want to approach it at this moment is not so much. So the mainstream media doubles down, does credible journalism on Weinstein once it finally decides to do it. I mean, for a while it's covered up. They stay on Cosby, they stay on Weinstein, Epstein. But now, so let's have more of an interest in Tara Reid. And yet the accusations against Trump are still pretty much largely ignored. They're just only mentioned as a footnote.
Yeah.
And I think that's revealing as well.
Yeah, look, I think there's been a double standard in all of this. I mean, what's the number of Trump accusers now? A couple dozen?
Yeah.
And they're not from 2016. Some of them are from the last 12 months and things like that. So this kind of goes back to the point I made earlier about, they need campaign coverage. And this is not a campaign, and it's unlike any other. The Biden campaign is not creating news because, they're not on the road. So I think the Tara Reid story, in a way, it probably got more coverage than it might have in a normal campaign. Because they needed something. They needed something on that side of the ledger. Every day they're chronicling Trump. They needed something on the other side. I guess in the end, I think that the coverage was probably what it should be. In the end, I think her story kind of fell apart, and I think that was based on just straightforward journalism. And it's important, I think, to say a lot of those stories were written by women at Fox, at PBS. And the woman at Vox went in and said, I followed this story for a year. I wanted it to be true. I tried to make a case. And in the end, she couldn't because the story was changing so often. PBS did a very interesting story last week. They interviewed 72 Biden colleagues, 64 of them women. And they kind of, it kind of presented a pretty clear picture in terms of what's going on. So my hunch is that story is kind of over for now. My hunch is it might have done some damage to, it didn't really hold up. So I am concerned that it's going to do some damage to people who do want to come forward with important stories and things like that.
Right.
But that's the choice she made. And in terms of the media, she turned down MSNBC. She certainly turned down Fox. She ended up doing this very weird interview with Megyn Kelly on her YouTube channel. So I think Tara Reid's, her media strategy, if you will, I don't think it was a very good one. And I think if she had a kind of a sound story to tell, she could have told it through the mainstream media. I don't think that Megyn Kelly interview did her any favors at all.
Agreed. All of that is accurate reporting, what you've described. But still, if Tara Reid never came forward, still.
Yeah.
There
wouldn't be any Trump discussion. You're right.
Where is the coverage?
None.
Where is the coverage consistent with coverage of other accusers of other individuals, other celebrities with fewer accusers than Trump?
Yeah.
Why does that just die?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I think the press has kind of bought the Trump spin, and the Trump spin is, and his new press secretary was saying it last week. Well, we had an election, and the American people decided, and that Access Hollywood tape came up, and people decided, and therefore it's not a story anymore. It's not true. People have come forward since the election, but I do feel like the press has kind of internalized that argument. Like, we did this. It didn't stick to him, so we're not going to go back. But if it comes up against a Democrat, Yeah. We're going to dig into that, and that's a really important story. And even though there are still 24 women with credible allegations against Trump, so I think there's a clear double standard on that front.
But that's just to drill down a bit further. It didn't stick. The press decides what sticks.
Oh, totally.
The press is what sticks it on you.
Right.
Well, for them to say it doesn't stick, it's y'all didn't want it to stick. You all didn't try to stick it. If you all decided, if you decide it's going to stick to Biden, it's going to stick.
Yeah.
If you decide it's going to stick to anybody else, it's going to stick.
Right.
So you all didn't decide it wouldn't stick. That's the thing that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, Benghazi went on for 3 years. There was no reason for that story to have a shelf life of 3 years. It had a shelf life of 3 years because Fox News wanted it to, and then the Beltway press said, "Oh, okay, well, we think it's news too." So they made that choice. They decided to stick with it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And those allegations, none of them have ever been debunked in a way. I think the Tara Reade story has been debunked. There's not even a credible pushback for the dozens of women who have made allegations against Trump. So it's still there. It's not like it's not like people have huge questions about any of these 20 plus accusers. Everyone essentially believes them. But the press chooses. The press always chooses.
Yeah. They're the sticker.
Yeah.
They decide what sticks on whom.
Yeah.
Eric, when last we talked, can you believe it? And what we talked a couple of weeks ago at the most?
Yeah.
We were talking about these deaths, the numbers in these deaths approaching Vietnam.
Yeah.
And it's doubled?
Yeah, almost.
Since we last talked.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to hit 100,000. I don't know, by the election, we might be at 250,000. And Trump will be saying what he's saying now, which is that A, we're going to have a vaccine in 2 months, or B, we don't need a vaccine because it's all going to disappear.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of Trump's, it's always been his, modus operandi is just create confusion with constant contradictions, even when it's a public health crisis. So he's saying two things at once about a vaccine. Look, way back when I think the death toll was, I think 10 or 20,000, and Trump was tweeting about his ratings for the briefings. I said, he's going to be tweeting about his ratings when we're at 100,000 dead. He doesn't care. He literally doesn't care. And if other people have mentioned, no empathy, no sympathy, almost telltale signs of a sociopath. Just a complete inability to connect with suffering in any form. And he doesn't like it. And it's not a good news story for him. And that's why he's mangled this in so many ways. Back in January, he didn't want to deal with it. He thought it would tank the market. Now he doesn't want to deal with it because he thinks, it's bad for his reelection. So the only person he's ever cared about his whole life is himself. And so, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. And I was tweeting that at the very beginning in terms of these deaths. And people still act shocked that he doesn't care. I mean, he's told us who he is for at least 5 years when he came down that escalator in June of 2015.
Folks, support independent journalism, especially journalism that actually is about journalism. Eric's analysis is spot on, and he's one of the only people doing this right now. Go to pressrun.media, read his twice weekly column, I think. Right there, Heather, right? And also he's on Twitter as well. A lot of good analysis if you just need to clear your mind and make sure. Don't watch too much television while you're sheltering in place, because as we're discussing, you will be confused. So watch television, but also read what Eric is writing at pressrun.media. Eric, thank you as always, buddy. Glad you're well. Stay well, okay?
Have a great week. Be good.
You do the same. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
God, you are our refuge. Send our ancestors to guard our doors. Cast out this virus from our communities and our bodies. Heal, bless, and protect everyone listening and their loved ones. Thank you for listening to Make It Plain and Get Woke. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.